My brother stalked and assaulted my girlfriend at a wedding. Now he's in prison, but his family still wants me to forgive him. It started at a wedding. Not just any wedding, it was my cousin Serena's. One of those big fat family affairs where uncles get drunk, kids run wild, and everyone pretends to like each other for the weekend. The venue was gorgeous. A sprawling estate with fairy lights, a dance floor under the stars, and a bar that seemed to have no closing time. It should have been a perfect night, but it turned into the worst night of my life. My name's Arjun. I'm 28 and I've been with my girlfriend Priya for 2 years. We met through mutual friends and she quickly became the love of my life. Funny, smart, beautiful, she made me better, and my family loved her. Or so I thought. Except for my brother, Karen. Karen's 31. Charming on the outside, but there's always been something off about him. He's that guy who pushes your buttons just to see how far he can go. He's gotten in trouble before bar fights, DUIs, even rumors of getting handsy at college parties. But my parents always brushed it off. Boys will be boys, they'd say. At Serena's wedding, Priya wore a light lavender sari with silver embroidery. She looked radiant. Every head turned, including Karen's. I noticed it early on. The way he stared. The way he kept finding excuses to be near her, offering drinks, cracking inside jokes, lingering too long when they spoke. Priya felt it too. She told me during dinner, whispering in my ear, "Your brother's giving me the creeps." I laughed it off. God, I wish I hadn't. The night spiraled around midnight. I was with some cousins playing beer pong inside the banquet hall. Priya had stepped out to take a call. 10 minutes passed. Then 20, I texted. No reply. Something in me panicked. I searched the terrace, the lawns, even the washrooms. Finally, I found her in one of the back corridors near the garden shed, crying, her blouse torn at the shoulder. She flinched when I touched her. "He followed me," she said. "He tried to force himself on me. He said he's wanted me since he first saw me. He wouldn't let me leave." It was Karan. My blood ran cold. I took her inside, got her water, called for a cab. She was shaking. I wrapped my coat around her. When she was safe with one of our friends, I turned back and saw him, smirking, holding a drink like nothing had happened. I didn't scream. I didn't punch him. I simply walked up and said, "Come outside." He followed, probably thinking we were going to talk, maybe even expecting a high five, like this was some sick joke. I led him to the parking lot. Then I broke his nose. He went down hard, blood everywhere. He called me crazy, said Priya was lying, that I was overreacting, but people had started gathering by then. My aunt, my uncle, Serena's dad. I told them everything, and when they tried to hush me up when they begged me not to ruin the wedding, I doubled down. Call the police. Now. They didn't. Of course they didn't. Family honor, right? So I did. That was just the beginning. The real battle started the next day. Karen denied everything. Said Priya misunderstood. Said she was tipsy. My parents sided with him. She must have led him on, my mother said. I cut them off that night. Police opened an investigation. Priya gave her statement. I supported her every step. She was brave, she stood tall, and when the case hit court months later, she testified like a warrior. We had security footage grainy, but enough to show him following her. Her torn sari, medical reports of bruises, witnesses who saw his obsession earlier that night. It all added up. Karen got convicted. He got 2 years. Not enough, but better than nothing. My family still doesn't speak to me. I don't care. I have Priya and I have peace. But I'll never forget the way he looked at her like she was a thing to possess. And I'll never forgive the people who let him become that monster. I lost a brother, but I saved the woman I love, and that's a trade I'll make every damn time. The silence from my family was deafening, but Priya and I were too busy rebuilding to care. For weeks after the trial, she had nightmares, flashbacks. She'd jolt awake crying, her fingers clenched in the sheets, her breath ragged like she was still in that corridor. Every time. I held her. Every time. I reminded her she was safe. But safety isn't a one-time promise, it's a war you fight daily. And that war wasn't over. 2 months after Karen's sentencing, I started getting strange calls, blocked numbers, silence on the other end. Once, someone whispered my name and hung up. Another time, a letter showed up at our apartment. "You destroyed your own blood. For what? Some girl?" No name, no return address, just that. We moved, changed numbers, bought a second lock, but the dread didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. Then one night, I saw him. Not Karan, my father. He was sitting across the cafe from where Priya and I were having dinner, alone, stirring tea, pretending not to see us, but when Priya went to the washroom, he came over. "You've made a mess," he said. I said nothing. "I didn't raise you to be like this. Karen made a mistake, but family, we handle it within. You shamed us." I looked him in the eyes. "You raised me to be silent. I chose better." He left without another word. We thought that was the end of it, but it never is it? Priya started noticing a car trailing her. A black Hyundai, same model, same number plate, always a few blocks behind, always gone window when she stopped. We filed a police report, again, but without clear proof, they couldn't do anything. Then one night, someone broke into our apartment while we were out. Nothing stolen, just things moved. Her perfume bottle knocked over, her underwear drawer opened, a picture frame cracked the one of us from Goa. We didn't sleep that night. I installed cameras the next day, and it paid off. A week later, I caught him. Not Karan. He was still in jail. But his friend Rishi, a guy I'd known growing up, always hovering around Karan like a loyal mutt, he'd been stalking Priya, harassing us, acting on Karan's behalf. I sent the footage to the police. They picked him up. He cracked in a day. Karan told me to scare her, said she ruined his life, said you needed to be reminded of what family loyalty means. That day, I realized Karan's sentence wasn't punishment to him. It was fuel. He wanted revenge. So I gave him something better. Exposure. I went online, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram. I told the story, shared the evidence, blurred Priya's face, but left Karan's name in bold. It went viral. Thousands shared it. News outlets picked it up. Hashtags trended. And with pressure mounting, prison authorities re-examined Karan's behavior. Turns out, he'd been using illegally acquired burner phones from inside, coordinating with people like Rishi to harass us. They revoked his privileges, opened a new case. He got additional time. My family was livid. But strangers sent support, donations, offers of therapy, legal advice, everything. And finally, Priya slept a full night. But peace doesn't come cheap. And Karan wasn't done. He was now a man obsessed not with lust, but with control. He hated the idea of being defeated, especially by the people he considered beneath him. He used to call Priya just a pretty face. Now, she was the one writing op-eds in national papers. He used to tell me I was soft. Now, I was the one who'd taken his freedom, his friends, his illusion of power. His ego couldn't stand it. So, the threats continued through proxies, social media sock accounts, whispers within our extended family. The same cousins who once played cricket with me in the backyard now looked away if we passed them on the street. But by now, Priya and I were unshakable. We'd been through fire. Now we were steel. We started helping other survivors through blogs, forums, even direct outreach. We volunteered with organizations that gave legal aid and therapy to victims of stalking and harassment. Our story wasn't just ours anymore. It was a lifeline for people who thought no one would believe them. The last thing Karan ever wanted was to be forgotten. And that's exactly what we were doing, turning his violence into a footnote in a much bigger story about survival, advocacy, and love that refused to die. And still, we knew he'd try something again. Because monsters don't stop being monsters just because they're in cages. They wait. And we were ready. 6 months. That's how long we had peace before the storm returned. It started with whispers again. Not online, this time real life. Someone slashed Priya's scooter tires. Someone broke into my office and scribbled on whiteboard, "Snakes betray blood." I laughed when I saw it, because it sounded exactly like something Karan would say. Dramatic, delusional, pathetic. But behind that mockery was fear not for myself, but for Priya. He was coming, not just metaphorically, literally. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a journalist friend. "You need to sit down," she said. Karan had applied for parole and he had backing. From who? From my parents. They filed a statement claiming he was mentally unwell, that his crimes were influenced by stress and trauma, and that he deserved another chance, a second chance, because family heals. They even painted me as the villain, said I broke the family apart, that Priya manipulated me. I was so angry I nearly tore the paper in half. But Priya, calm as ever, just said, "Then we don't let them win. Again." So we fought. Legally, publicly. We compiled every threat, every stalker, every online account traced back to Karan's jail connections. We made sure the parole board saw him not as a man remorseful, but a man obsessed, a predator who had only grown more bitter in the shadows. The day of the hearing, I sat across from him. He looked older, leaner, but his eyes still smug, still dangerous. When asked if he had anything to say to me or Priya, he smirked and said, "All I ever wanted was to protect my brother from gold diggers." The silence that followed was heavier than any courtroom gavel. Even the parole board shifted uncomfortably. I didn't say anything. Priya didn't either. We didn't need to. He'd shown them exactly who he still was. Parole. Denied. We thought this would finally be the end. And for a while, it was. We moved again. This time, to a small beach town where no one knew us. We opened a cozy cafe and called it Phoenix Roast. People came for the coffee but stayed for the calm. Priya smiled more. I smiled more. We started dreaming again. Not about the past, but about a future. Maybe marriage, maybe a dog, maybe even kids one day. But life doesn't tie bows so easily. One morning, a woman came into the cafe, early 30s, nervous. Are you Arjun? I nodded. She hesitated, then whispered, I think your brother's trying to reach me through a pen pal program. He said awful things about you, about your girlfriend. My heart froze. She showed me the letters, one after another, all written by Karen. Fake name, same voice, same threats, same manipulations. He was still trying. Still playing God from behind bars. Still trying to destroy everything we built. But this time, we had power. We reported it to the warden, to the parole board, to every authority possible. With the woman's consent, we went public again. The court extended his sentence further. Solitary. No more pens. No more games. This is where most people would say, and then we lived happily ever after. But that's not quite true. What is true is this. We learned to carry our scars with pride. We learned that healing isn't linear. And we learned that some family bonds need to be burned to save your soul. Karen once told me that blood is thicker than water. I now know that love is thicker than both. Update 1. My brother sent a letter from prison, and my father delivered it to my door. It's been almost a year since I last updated, and I wish I was writing under better circumstances. But something happened last week that shook me and Priya more than I expected. My father showed up at our cafe, unannounced, uninvited, holding a letter. From Karen. Let me explain. He looked older, but still wore that same blame in his eyes. I hadn't seen my father in almost 2 years. After he testified for Karen during the parole hearing, I cut him off, blocked his number, no calls, no visits. I had made it clear that if he chose to support the man who stalked and assaulted my girlfriend, he had no place in my life. So when I looked up from the espresso machine and saw his frame at the doorway, the same stiff shoulders, the same judgmental eyes, I froze. He looked older, not just aged, but worn. Maybe guilt, maybe grief. I wasn't sure. Priya was in the back prepping pastries. I quietly stepped out and met him on the sidewalk. Dad, I said, what are you doing here? He didn't answer at first. He just reached into his coat pocket and handed me a thick, creased envelope. From Karen, he mumbled. I didn't take it. I didn't want to touch anything that came from that man's hands. He wanted you to read it. My father continued, his voice gravelly. Said you'd understand. No, I won't, I replied, already turning to go back inside. Arjun, he's your brother. I turned back slowly. That one word, brother, cut deeper than it should have. You know what he did, I said, and you still call him that like it means something. My father didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. Just whispered. You don't have to forgive, but don't shut your heart so tightly that you forget who you are. That part? That ticked me off. Because for the first time in years, I do know who I am, and it's not someone who makes space for monsters, even if they share your DNA. The letter burned in my pocket. All night. I didn't tell Priya about the letter right away. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the trash. Another part wanted to open it and see if maybe, just maybe, Karen had finally admitted to the truth, or at least shown some sliver of humanity. But deep down, I knew what it would contain. Manipulation, blame, control. Still, around 2 a.m. after Priya had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and opened it. Here's what it said. Arjun, I see now how deeply you've betrayed me. But I forgive you. You're still my little brother. You always will be. I was wrong to act out, but everything I did came from a place of protection. You never understood what Priya was doing to you, how she twisted your mind. Even now, you defend her. Even now. You let her turn you against your family. But I still love you. I always will. When I get out, and I will, I hope we can sit like brothers again. Laugh, talk, heal. Until then, keep thinking of me, because I'll be thinking of you. Karan. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just folded the letter back up and burned it in the sink. Because every word of it proved what I already knew. Karen hadn't changed. Not one damn bit. Priya found out the next morning and she wasn't mad. I told her everything. About my dad, the letter, the message, how part of me still felt guilty for not feeling guilty. She didn't yell. She didn't even look surprised. She just said, he doesn't want reconciliation, Arjun. He wants access. That line hit me hard. Because it was true. Karen's version of healing meant letting him back into my mind, my space, my life, one toxic inch at a time. We talked for hours that morning about our boundaries, about how even when people seem like they want peace, it doesn't mean they deserve a place in your healing. Sometimes choosing yourself looks like cruelty to the outside world, but to survivors, it's survival. We decided to share the story. That night, Priya and I wrote a joint post on her blog, the one she started after her book, Lavender Scars, became a hit. The post was called, "When Forgiveness is Weaponized." We shared what happened, how my father tried to play the messenger, how Karen was still playing games from prison, how some abusers don't need a second chance. They need silence. The post went viral. Thousands of comments, hundreds of DMs. People shared stories about abusive siblings, manipulative parents, and the guilt they carried for choosing peace over blood. We weren't alone, and that made all the difference. My father came back a week later. I thought he'd come to argue, to shame me, to defend his precious older son again. But he didn't. He came alone, no letter this time, just red-rimmed eyes and a quiet apology. He stood in front of our cafe, the same spot as before, and said, "I read the blog. You were right. I didn't see it before. I see it now." He handed me a photo. It was of me and Karen as kids at the beach. He'd written on the back in his handwriting, "One of you stayed in that photo. One of you grew up." I didn't say anything, just nodded. He left. I haven't seen him since. Final thoughts for now. I don't know if I'll ever truly forgive my brother. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned, and he never even tried to earn it. But I'm grateful for the clarity, because now I no longer confuse silence with peace and blood with love. Priya and I, we're doing good. Business is growing. She's writing her second book. And me, I finally started therapy. Because being strong doesn't mean being silent. It means healing loudly, messily, and unapologetically. Thanks for reading, Reddit. Let me know if you want another update. Update 2. My brother escaped from prison and the first person he tried to contact was me. It's Arjun again. I wasn't planning on coming back so soon, but something happened that I never thought I'd write in real life, and not just some Reddit revenge fantasy thread. My brother escaped from prison. Yeah, you read that right. Karen is no longer behind bars, and the first thing he did? Try to find me. Let me explain what happened and how I'm doing everything I can to protect Priya, myself, and the life we built from the wreckage he left behind. It started with a knock at 3 a.m. Priya and I had just gotten home from a late dinner shift at the cafe. We were binge watching some cheesy cooking competition, halfway asleep on the couch when the knock came. 3 sharp bangs. I thought it was just some drunk neighbor, but when I looked through the peephole, my heart dropped. 2 police officers. I opened the door. "Arjun Khanna?" one of them asked. "Yes." The older one nodded gravely. "There's been an escape. We believe your brother, Karen Khanna, may attempt to contact you." My mind blanked. Wait, escape? Like, he's out, as in, not in custody anymore? "Yes, sir," the younger cop replied. "He slipped through during a transport to a high-security psych evaluation, stole a car, and disappeared before the next checkpoint." My blood turned to ice. He still thinks he has unfinished business. The officers weren't just warning me. They were advising me to leave town for a few days just to be safe. "He's obsessed with you," one said, flipping through notes. "Obsessed with proving something. He doesn't want revenge, he wants control." They offered protection, but I knew better than to rely on a system that already failed Priya once. We had cameras, locks, alarms. But none of that would stop someone like Karen, not when he had nothing to lose. Still, the scariest part? I wasn't scared for myself. I was scared for Priya. Because Karen's fixation had always started with her. We left in the middle of the night. We packed a bag and drove 4 hours to a quiet coastal town where a friend of Priya's owned a small homestay. No internet, no headlines, just time. Time to think, to plan, to breathe. Except we couldn't, because at 10:17 a.m. the next morning, I got a text from a burner number. "Miss me?" No name, no image, just that. And I knew instantly it was Karen. The messages got weirder by the hour. For the next 2 days, the texts kept coming. Some were passive-aggressive. "Still hiding behind her skirt, huh?" Some were poetic. "Funny how the birds always fly south before the slaughter." "Yeah, what the actual hell?" Others, straight-up threats masked as nostalgia. "Remember the train station we used to sneak to when we were 10? Bet it still smells like oil and guilt." I blocked every number, but he kept finding new ones. Until Priya, God bless her brain, figured something out. He wasn't just messaging, he was tracking us. Karen wasn't just guessing our location. He was predicting it. His references were too accurate, too localized. Priya checked our car and found a magnetic GPS tracker hidden under the wheel arch. He had tagged us while we slept, maybe before we even left, maybe at the cafe, maybe weeks ago. I wanted to puke. We called the police immediately and they launched a full manhunt, but they were always one step behind him. Because Karen wasn't trying to kill us. He was trying to haunt us, and he was doing a damn good job. Then, Priya got a letter. At her parents' house, that same day, her mom called her in hysterics. He mailed us something, a letter. It has pictures. We drove straight there, escorted by cops. Inside the envelope were printed photographs, not violent ones. Photos of us, from the cafe, from our apartment, from a weekend picnic last month taken from the tree line. The letter was short. I see you. I remember everything you took from me. I remember how you made him turn against me. And I know how to make you remember too. This is where I lost it. I snapped. I punched a wall. I screamed at the police. I told them I wanted him found. Or I'd do it myself. They warned me not to engage, that provoking Karen would only make things worse. But I already knew the truth. He wasn't going to stop until he felt like he'd won. And I wasn't going to let him. So I decided to flip the game. I posted a video addressed to Karen Hantek. It was 3 minutes long, raw, unfiltered, shot on my phone. I looked straight into the lens and said, "You think you're the puppet master? You think I'm scared of you? Here's what you don't understand, Karen. I already beat you. Every time Priya laughs, every morning I wake up beside her, every customer who walks into our cafe, that's a victory. You don't haunt me anymore. You're just a sad little man hiding in the shadows of your own failure. You want attention? Fine. Here's your 15 minutes. But just know this. The next knock you hear won't be opportunity. It'll be the sound of justice catching up." We posted it to every platform, tagged news outlets, and sure enough, it went viral. He took the bait. The next day, someone spotted a man matching Karen's description near an abandoned motel outside town using a public terminal to comment on the video. They got his license plate. The police set up a trap at a diner he'd been seen lurking near. They got him. No drama, no chase, just a man who thought he was untouchable, cuffed with ketchup stains on his shirt and a look of stunned silence. Aftermath, and a shocking confession. The police let me watch part of the interview footage after his rearrest. He wasn't angry. He was confused, like we had betrayed him. He said, "I just wanted to fix it. He's my brother. She took him from me." And then, the most chilling part, he smiled and said, "But even now, even in cuffs, I live in his head. I'll always live there." Maybe he's right, but not the way he thinks. Yes, Karen still lives in my head, but not as a monster I'm afraid of. He lives there as a reminder of what I survived, of what we endured, of how far Priya and I have come. And every time I feel that knot of fear twist in my gut, I remember something my therapist told me. The goal isn't to forget the trauma, the goal is to rob it of its power. So yeah, Karen might still sit in a cell somewhere, drawing revenge fantasies on the walls with a paperclip. But me? I'm sitting in our cafe watching Priya laugh with a customer, and I've never felt more free. Let me know if you want update 3 next. It gets deeper. Because after all that, my mother called, and she said 4 words that shook everything again. I need your help. Update 3. A surprise visitor. It had been nearly 3 years since the trial, since we stood in court and watched Karen get led away in handcuffs, since the moment our family fractured into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. Life was quieter now, not always peaceful, but quieter. Priya was thriving. Her therapy had shifted from survival to growth. She was teaching art again, painting more often, laughing louder. As for me, I'd changed careers, stepping into nonprofit legal work, helping victims navigate systems I once had to claw through myself. Then one Friday evening, there was a knock at the door. We weren't expecting anyone. Priya and I exchanged a glance. Her hand went still on the kitchen counter, hovering over a coffee bowl. I slowly walked to the door and checked the peephole. My heart stopped. It was my mother. I hadn't seen her since the sentencing, not in court, not in hospital rooms, not at family gatherings, the few that still existed. She looked aged. Her once dark hair now streaked almost completely gray. Her eyes had the same sharpness but seemed dimmer somehow, like the flame had long since burned too hot and left only smoke. I opened the door partway. She took a breath. "I want to see you," she said. "Not him. You." I said nothing. Priya came up behind me. She saw who it was and froze. "I won't stay long," my mother added. I need to say something before it's too late. Against everything in me, I stepped aside. We let her in. She walked slowly into the living room, her eyes darting around like she was stepping onto a crime scene. Maybe she was. Maybe guilt had painted every wall in blood. She didn't sit. Neither did we. Then she started talking. Hesitantly at first. "I was wrong," she said. Her voice cracked like she hadn't said those words out loud before. "I thought I was protecting family, but I didn't realize what kind of man I raised." Priya stiffened next to me. My mother looked directly at her. "You didn't deserve what happened. Not then, not after. And I didn't protect you when I should have. I'm sorry." Priya didn't speak. Not yet. My mother continued. "Karen, he was always trouble, but I kept thinking he'd grow out of it. Boys will be boys, you know." She winced at her own words. "I told myself that lie so many times, I started believing it." She looked at me next. Her eyes brimmed with regret. "I lost you too. Not just him. I know that now." We stood in that silence for what felt like hours. Then Priya said softly, "It wasn't just what you did, it was what you didn't do." My mother nodded. "I know." We offered her tea. She declined. She left after an hour. We didn't forgive her that night, but we didn't hate her either. Later, Priya said, "She's not our family yet, but maybe one day she could earn that again." Maybe she could. Update 4, the book deal. 6 months after that unexpected visit from my mother, life took another surprising turn. Priya's blog, the one she'd started to process her trauma, titled Lavender Scars, had gone viral. It wasn't dramatic or preachy, it was honest. Painfully honest. She didn't name Karen or our family directly, but she told the story in raw, vivid truth. Her posts were full of color, metaphor, memory, and power. One of them, titled "The Smell of Marigold Still Makes Me Sick," was about the wedding. The post opened like a poem and ended like a gut punch. It was shared over 600,000 times. Then came the emails from victims, from survivors, from therapists and professors, from publishers. It was one particular email from a senior editor at a progressive publishing house that changed everything. "We don't want to just print your blog. We want to help you tell the story in your voice, your pace, your way, if you're ready." Priya stared at the screen for a long time. "Am I allowed to do this?" she whispered. "Allowed?" I asked. "To take up space, to speak, to let the world hear it." "You survived," I said. "Now you get to live." She signed the deal in March. Writing the book wasn't easy. There were nights she cried through entire chapters. Some pages never made it into the final manuscript. They were too tender, too torn. But what emerged was something fierce. The title stayed the same. Lavender Scars. It was published that winter. It became a bestseller within weeks. But more than that, it became a lifeline. Letters poured in. Emails from women and men who had never told a soul what happened to them. Some were teenagers, some were grandmothers, some were therapists who read it aloud in group sessions. One letter came from someone anonymous who only signed the note. "I was supposed to be your sister-in-law. I was with him before you were, and I ran, but I never told anyone why. I wish I had. Maybe I could have stopped him. I'm sorry." Priya folded that letter into her journal without a word. She was invited to speak on panels, TEDx, college campuses, trauma centers. But she never turned into a brand. She stayed Priya. She still taught art at the local community center, still kept her daily routine, still got panic attacks sometimes, still took her meds, still needed hugs at night. One night, after a reading event in Mumbai, we were walking back to our hotel. A woman stopped her in the lobby. "I don't want a selfie," the woman said, "just thank you. Your story reminded me I'm not crazy. I'm not alone." Priya smiled gently and said, "Neither am I." Update 5, the final hearing. 2 years after Lavender Scars was published, something unexpected happened. We received a letter from the state correctional board. Karen had filed for early release. My stomach turned when I read it. Early release? For what? Good behavior in a controlled cage doesn't undo what he did at a wedding, in the hospital, in our home, and in every dark corner of Priya's memory. Priya stared at the letter for a long time. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just said, "I want to go. To the hearing, I want him to see that I'm still standing." The hearing was set for the 18th of April. It was a closed session with just a panel of 5 correctional officers, Karen, a prison psychologist, and U.S. victims or representatives. When we entered the building, the chill of government walls hit us. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, and silence. We were ushered into a small room with 2 rows of benches and a long table. Karen was already seated in handcuffs, looking thinner but not remorseful. He didn't look at us, not once. The officers introduced the purpose of the hearing. Karen's attorney began with a well-rehearsed plea about time served, rehabilitation, and personal growth. Then Karen stood up and spoke. I made a mistake, he said. I lost control. I've changed since then. Mistake? He used that word as if it were a wrong email. A fumbled handshake, not a violent, haunting nightmare. Then it was Priya's turn. She stood. Her hands were steady, her voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like glass. A mistake, she echoed. No, you made a choice. You chose to stalk me, to trap me in a room, to hurt me. You chose to call me a liar when I screamed. You chose to act like nothing happened when your family begged me to keep it quiet. Karen finally looked at her, just for a moment. Maybe he expected tears. There were none. She continued, I'm not here to beg for you to stay locked up. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to remind this board that rehabilitation without accountability is just permission with nicer words. If you want to be free, first say what you did. Own it. There was silence in the room. Then I spoke. I lost my family because of him. I lost my peace. And even after everything, he's never once said I'm sorry. That should matter. Words matter because actions follow them. Karen said nothing. His lawyer didn't rebut. After we left the room, I turned to Priya and asked, how do you feel? She paused, then smiled slightly. Lighter. A week later, we got the letter. Parole denied. The board wrote that they found the testimony of the victim compelling and credible, and that the offender had not demonstrated genuine remorse or sufficient accountability. Justice, or at least some echo of it, had finally spoken. Final reflection. We drove to the ocean that day. Not to celebrate, but to breathe. Priya stood on the shore as the waves kissed her feet, and I watched the wind play with her scarf. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the chapter close. Not the story, just the chapter. Healing isn't a finish line, it's a tide. It pulls you under, drags you out, then gently lays you back on the sand, a little cleaner, a little braver. We didn't win, we endured. And sometimes that's more powerful than winning.